My grandson's question that night left me without words. Sometimes life surprises you in ways you could never have prepared for. That night I thought it will be just another evening. Another quiet moment in my house, the kind of night where the world feels small and still. But one question, just one, shook me so deeply that I couldn't find words at first. It came from someone I love more than anything, my grandson Daniel. His words still echo in my heart. And tonight I'll tell you how it happened. But before I begin, let me ask you something. From which cities are you watching me tonight? I love knowing where everyone is tuning in from. Whether you're in a big city with glowing lights or a quiet town where the evenings are peaceful. Share it in the comments below because it always warms me to see how many places these stories can reach. Now let me take you back to that unforgettable night. The house was calm, the kind of calm that comes when the day has finally exhaled its last bit of energy. The clock ticked softly in the living room, and the faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I had just made myself a cup of chamomile tea, its steam curling upward like a secret trying to escape. At 72, I've grown to cherish these little rituals, things that keep me grounded, that remind me I'm still here, still present, still living. Daniel had been staying with me for a few days. He's 23 now, tall with broad shoulders, but to me, he's still the boy who used to run through my kitchen with scraped knees and endless questions about how the world works. He's always been curious, sometimes more curious than I was ready for. That evening, he lingered after dinner. We'd shared a simple meal of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad I'd thrown together with what was left in the fridge. We laughed over silly memories, like the time he tried to build a treehouse and ended up hammering more nails into his thumb than into the wood. His laugh is contagious, deep and warm, and it filled my living room like music I never wanted to end. After dinner, I thought he'd retreat to his room or put on headphones the way young men often do. But instead he followed me into the living room. He sat down across from me, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze steady in a way that caught me off guard. "Grandma," he said softly, almost hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" I remember pausing mid-sip of my tea. The tone in his voice wasn't casual. It carried weight. I set the cup down and leaned back in my chair, my eyes meeting his. "Of course, sweetheart, you can ask me anything." He nodded, his fingers fidgeting slightly, like he was searching for the right words. The lamp beside us cast a golden glow across his face, highlighting the seriousness in his eyes, and then he asked it his question. But before I tell you exactly what he said, I want to paint this moment clearly for you because it wasn't just about words. It was about the air between us, heavy with something unspoken, something that made my heart beat a little faster. It was about the way time seemed to hold still, as though the universe was waiting with me for his next sentence. The question he asked that night wasn't one I expected. Not from him, not from anyone. It wasn't about school or money or relationships, things I thought young men his age usually wrestle with. No, it was something much deeper, something that pulled me into the core of who he is and who I am, too. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, but I could hear the vulnerability hiding underneath it. It was the kind of question that can change the way two people see each other forever. My breath caught in my chest. For a moment I couldn't speak. I just looked at him. This young man I've watched grow up. This person who still surprises me after all these years. And all I could think was, how do I answer something like that? That silence, those few seconds when I searched for words, felt like an eternity. He didn't rush me, didn't look away. He just waited, his eyes locked on mine. His patience telling me that whatever answer I gave would matter more than I could imagine. The kettle in the kitchen clicked as it cooled. The wind outside brushed against the window. And in that stillness, I felt the weight of love and trust settle around us. He had given me a gift, really a gift of honesty, of courage, of letting me see a part of him he hadn't shown before. And I knew right then that my response would have to come not just from my mouth, but from my heart. Because when someone you love opens themselves like that, you don't meet them with hesitation. You meet them with truth. That was the moment my world shifted. The moment when I realized that even at 72, life still holds surprises that can make your heart race like you're young again. His question left me without words at first, but it also gave me something else. An opening, a bridge between generations, a chance to connect in a way that felt rare and precious. That night, as the clock ticked and the shadows stretched longer across the room, I leaned forward, reached for his hand, and prepared myself to speak, Because sometimes the questions that leave us silent are the very ones that lead us to answers we didn't know we were searching for. He didn't pull his hand away when I reached for it. His palm was warm and slightly rough, the way hands get when they've been doing real work in the world. We sat like that for a few breaths, the lamp throwing that soft honed circle across the carpet, the rest of the room fading into comfortable shadow. Outside, a car hummed by and then the quiet pressed in again, gentle as wool. "Go ahead, Daniel," I said. "Ask me." He swallowed, gathered himself, and looked me in the eyes with a steadiness that felt older than his 23 years. "Are you happy, Grandma?" he asked. "And if you're not, will you let me help you change that?" For a moment, everything inside me went silent, as if my heart had stepped into a doorway and forgotten what it meant to move forward. Of all the questions I'd braced for about money, about family, about whether I was thinking of selling the house, there wasn't one. He hadn't asked what I could do for him. He'd asked what we could do for me. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it go, shaky like a curtain lifting at the start of a play. "That's a big question," I said. "I know." He squeezed my hand. "I don't want to overstep. I've noticed things. You're here, but it seems like part of you is always standing at the kitchen window watching a life that already happened." I felt myself flinch, not because he was wrong, but because he was precisely right. The kitchen window looks out on the maple tree, and sometimes at dusk the branches hold the last light the way hands catch rain. I've stood there too many evenings, tea cooling in my cup, remembering the sound of my late husband's boots by the door, the weight of years we built together, and the way time eventually asks you to set down what you never imagined carrying alone. "I miss him," I said. "And I miss who I was with him. But the missing doesn't have to be all I am." It surprised me that those words were ready, as if his question had turned a key I'd been wearing around my neck for years. Daniel leaned back, exhaling. "I've been scared to ask," he admitted. "I didn't want you to think I was telling you how to live. I want to be part of it if you'll have me." The kettle's metal ticking marked the passing seconds while my mind went quiet in that particular way. It does right before a decision. "Tell me what you had in mind," I said. He grinned, quick, boyish, then careful again. "A list," he said. 72 new things. One for every year of your life so far. They don't have to be big. They just have to be alive. We do them together. We make memories on purpose. And I record your stories while we do. Your advice, the funny bits, the hard ones. You always say I should learn from my elders. Well, I want to learn from you. And I think there are a lot of people who might want to hear too." I laughed before I could help it. 72. He held up both hands. Okay. Maybe we start with 12. But I like the poetry of 72. The idea landed in me with a soft thud, like a book set on a table. There was weight to it. I stood, my knees announcing themselves the way they do at 72, and walked to the bookshelf. I pulled down the old biscuit tin I keep tucked behind the photo albums. The lid rasped as I removed it, and the smell of paper and a faint trace of cinnamon rose up. Letters, ticket stubs, a pressed spring rig of lavender, a Polaroid of me in a yellow dress on a pier, hair wild from the wind, mouth open in a laugh I could hear across time. I kept saying I'd go back to that pier. I told him we were in Maine, but grandfather dared me to dip my feet in the freezing water, and I dared him to sing to me in public. He did badly. Daniel smiled, eyes starting between the picture and my face. "Put the pier on the list," he said. "We'll go." "Who said you're invited?" I teased, and he pretended to be offended until we both laughed, a bright sound that made the living room feel young. We carried the tin to the coffee table. I fetched a notebook from the drawer, the one with the robin on the cover, and a pen that writes a little too smoothly. He turned the first page and handed me the pen with ceremony. My hand hovered. The truth is, I've been afraid of lists for years. Lists mean you have to look your wants in the eye. "Before we write," I said, "I want to know something." "Why now? What made you ask me tonight?" He considered. "I was scared," he said, "to tell you about me. I've been pretending school is going fine and that I have a plan, but the truth is I'm lost. I dropped 2 classes. I sit in lectures and feel like I'm wearing someone else's shoes. I didn't want to disappoint you. Then I thought, what if I told you the truth and it helped you tell yours? Maybe we could be lost together for a minute and then figure out a map." I reached up and cupped his cheek, a gesture I've done since he was little. "You didn't disappoint me," I said. "You honored me. You trusted me. I let my hand fall. We'll make a map. He swallowed relief, softening the lines of worry he's been carrying on his forehead. Then is it okay if I stay here a while? Just until I get my feet under me. We can make the list and I don't know, cook dinners and argue about whether cardamom belongs in coffee. Only if you promise to do the dishes and carry the laundry basket, I said. And to listen when I get bossy. Deal. We turned our attention to the notebook. I wrote the first entry with slow, careful letters. 1. Watch the sun rise from a pier and laugh out loud for no reason. The second came easier. 2. Call my sister Sophia and say the thing I've been avoiding. I'm sorry I let pride keep us apart. We kept going. 3. Teach Daniel to make my mother's bread. 4. Dance in the living room to the song we played at my wedding. 5. Learn to take a picture on that phone of mine without cutting off heads. Add one for me, he said. 6. Ask Grandma the 3 questions I'm afraid to ask. I nodded. And I'll answer. That's the agreement. Honesty goes both ways. We talked until the tea had gone cold and the clock's hands crept toward 10. At one point he went to the kitchen and came back with honey to sweeten the new pot. He moved easily through my cabinets like he'd memorized where everything lives. Mugs on the second shelf. Sugar in the blue jar with the chip on its lid. The house felt different with him in it. Not louder exactly, but more awake, like a room where someone has just opened a window. So he said, settling back onto the couch, that pier, the one in the photo. How far is it? Could we catch a sunrise there? It's a day and a half if you drive like your grandfather did, which is to say with one hand on the wheel and one on the radio. I said, we could go this weekend. If we really wanted to, we could leave at 4 in the morning and catch the light at the lake an hour from here. It isn't the ocean, but water is water and dawn is dawn. Daniel checked his phone, then grinned at me over the screen. We could, he said. We really could. Something light unlatched in my chest. I stood, surprising us both. Get your jacket, I said. Who says we have to wait for a weekend to begin again? The lake is only an hour. We'll be back before the world has finished its first coffee. He blinked. You're serious? Look at the list, I said, tapping the page. It doesn't say someday. Says now. He scrambled up, laughter spilling out of him. We moved around each other in a small domestic ballet. Me checking the hall drawer for the flashlight that never has batteries when you need it. Him grabbing a blanket in my old thermos. Me writing a quick note to myself to take my pills when we got home. I caught our reflection in the entryway mirror as we put on our coats. A tall young man with earnest eyes and an older woman whose smile made her look like her own daughter. There was something about the pair of us that made my throat swell. A line of family made visible in posture and the tilt of a grin. The night air was crisp and surprised to see us. The car's engine rumbled awake, and the dashboard light washed us in a soft can glow. Daniel drove careful, as if the dark were a neighbor we didn't want to disturb. Street lights slid by like beads on a string. Houses dozed. The town fell away behind us and the fields opened. Flat stretches of sleeping earth with the occasional farmhouse set back like a lantern in a sea. We didn't turn on the radio. We let the quiet be the music. What were your 3 questions? I asked finally, fingers tucked under the blanket across my lap. He inhaled. First, what did you think your life would be at 72? Second, what do you wish someone had told you at 23? And third, what would you do tomorrow if you weren't afraid? They hung between us, glowing like signs on a highway. I could have given the neat answers. Be wise, be patient, drink water. But he had asked for honesty. So I gave it. At 72, I said, I thought I would be finished with firsts. I thought life would be tidying itself up. All gentle edges and stories told many times. I didn't expect to feel this much hunger for new places, new skills, new jokes. I didn't expect to still learn what forgiveness requires. I watched the speedometer hold steady. He was listening with his whole body. At 23, I wish someone had told me that the shape of your life can change and you can change with it. You won't become someone else, but you'll become more yourself than you knew you could be. And it's not a straight line. You'll lose things you thought you needed and gain things you didn't know to want. I looked out at the dark, at the place where sky becomes road, becomes sky again. And tomorrow, if I weren't afraid, I said, I would record my voice and tell a story to strangers because maybe it would make some of them feel less alone. He turned his head briefly, a smile threading at the corner of his mouth. Then let's do that too. We reached the lake well before dawn. The parking lot was empty, our headlights sweeping across a sign with a loopy map of trails. We tucked the blanket under our arms, grabbed the thermos, and made our way to the little dock that stretches out over the water like a finger pointing at the horizon. It was cold enough to make our breath visible. The sky was the deep navy of held breath. We sat side by side on the wooden planks, feet swinging, the lake shushing softly against the posts. Somewhere far off, a bird declared itself awake. The world smelled like damp wood and new possibilities. Do you ever feel like you don't know how to be a grown-up? Daniel asked quietly. All the time, I said. I just have more practice pretending I do. He laughed, and the sound made a small cloud in the air. I poured tea into the metal cup, and we passed it back and forth. The first thin line of silver arrived at the edge of everything, so subtle you could miss it if you were looking away. Then the sky began to lighten, taking on the soft pink of an old sweater. The lake received it without fuss, brightening by degrees. I felt my spine lengthen as if someone had adjusted me to fit more light. Number one, I whispered, watch the sunrise from a dock and laugh for no reason. Daniel began to hum low and tuneless, and I nudged him with my shoulder. Your grandfather would approve. I said he once sang to me in public. Legend, Daniel said. We didn't speak for a while after that. There is a kind of silence that is merely the absence of noise. And there is the other kind, the full kind, where two people are thinking out loud without words. We sat in the full kind. When the sun finally lifted its face over the far trees, it spilled gold across the lake in a road so bright it hurt. I laughed then, the way I had promised I would, not because anything was funny, but because the body sometimes knows to celebrate before the mind catches up. On the drive home, the town was waking. People in bright vests jogging, a diner light flicking on, a woman pulling up a metal gate with a clatter. Daniel rolled his window down an inch and let the new day air pour in. I feel different, he said. We are, I said simply. We're different people than we were at midnight. That's what mornings do if you let them. Back in the kitchen, we wrote number one in the notebook and drew a little sun beside it. I made eggs. He toasted a heel of bread and slathered it with jam from the jar that sticks as if it wants to hold on to summer. We ate standing up, too giddy to sit. After breakfast, before the day could crowd in with errands and emails, Daniel set his phone on the counter and said, Tell me a story into this. Just 3 minutes about the pier, about fear and laughter. His voice was gentle, asking permission. I understood the question inside the question. Are you willing to be seen, truly seen? Not as the widow who tends roses, but as a whole person who still wants things. Yes, I said, surprising myself with how easy the word came. I'll try. He tapped the screen and I started with the truth. That love doesn't end. It changes addresses. That fear sits on the porch and says it's keeping you safe. But sometimes it's just asking you to stop living. That sometimes a grandson asks his grandmother whether she is happy. And the question is not an accusation but a bridge. When I finished, we looked at each other and at the little glowing square that now held my voice. It felt intimate and brave. Like we had lit a candle and set it in a window for whoever might need it. We should end every story with a question, Daniel said. The same way I asked you not to pressure people, just to invite them. What question? What would you do tomorrow if you weren't afraid? I nodded. It's a good one. The rest of the day moved around us as days do. Trash to the curb, towels into the dryer. An email from Sophia that made my eyes water and my shoulders drop with relief. She wrote back 3 words. I miss you. We added Visit Sophia to the list. In the afternoon, Daniel carried the ladder out to the garage and changed the bulb I've been ignoring because it requires reaching too high. I showed him how to cut apples so the slices look pretty on a plate. Small domestic victories, our favorite kind. Toward evening, we sat on the porch while the maple turned the yard into stained glass. He told me about the class he dropped and about the professor who intimidates him, and I told him about the dance I almost went to in 1971 and why I didn't, and how sometimes no is the right word and sometimes it's the one you regret. He asked me the second of his 3 questions again and I added things. Drink water, yes, but also learn to apologize quickly and mean it, and learn to leave parties when you're done, and learn that your body is not the enemy even when your knees argue about stairs. He laughed. We added make a pie together to the list because he'd never rolled dough, and I said it was high time. When the porch light came on by itself, we went inside. He rinsed the teacups without being asked. I wiped the table. We moved like people who had practiced together for a long time. And maybe we had because love is practice. It is choosing again and again to show up, to ask, to listen, to tell the truth, to take the drive in the dark because the morning is worth it. Before bed, he paused in the hallway, hands in his pockets, and said, "Thank you for saying yes, Grandma." I stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't a dramatic hug. Not the kind that breaks something open. It was the ordinary kind, the kind that builds a house one brick at a time. "Thank you for asking," I said. The question was the door. We walked through it together. After he went to his room, I stood a long moment in the quiet. The notebook lay open on the coffee table, the word sunrise smiling up at me. I thought of everyone watching and listening tonight, of the cities and towns and small streets and tall buildings, of people who might be standing at their own kitchen windows wondering if firsts are still possible. I wanted to tell them. Yes, I wanted to tell them. You get to ask for a life that fits. You get to answer big questions with a small first step. Like leaving at 4 in the morning for a lake that waits without judgment for you to arrive. I turned off the lamp. The room darkened, but I didn't feel alone inside it. In the blue hush before sleep, I could still hear Daniel's question, not heavy anymore but bright. "Are you happy? And if you're not, will you let me help you change that?" I had been without words when he asked me. Now I had one simple and sturdy enough to build the rest of my days.